As we were crafting this program, we thought about how to tie it back to a larger framework, a larger understanding of the agricultural industry. And you don't have to dig too deep to find Mark Lipson's name come up in the work that he's doing with USDA and has done throughout his career in organics. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you Mark Lipson. And Mark serves as the U.S. Department of Agriculture, at the U.S. Department of Agriculture as the Organic and Sustainable Agriculture Policy Advisor in the Office of the Secretary. His responsibilities include cross-agency coordination and synthesis of organic farm policy issues. He leads the internal USDA working group. He also serves on the coordinating team of the USDA Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food initiative. Mark is located in the office of the Undersecretary for Marketing and Regulatory Programs and works closely with the Agricultural Marketing Service of the USDA. Since 1983, Mark's seen this since it's come along all the way since 1990 Foods Act. Since 1993, Mark has been a member of the Molino Creek Farming Collective, a cooperative multifamily organic farming community near Davenport in Santa Cruz County, California. His farm experience has included all aspects of the operation from production to marketing. We're very pleased to have Mark with us today. Help me welcome Mark Lipson.
Thank you. All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm sorry I made you come in from outside. Beautiful day out there. I'll try and keep you awake here for a few minutes at least. I've got a lot of slides to go through because there's a lot to cover relative to this question of is organic an option for me and what's USDA doing about it. And I'll go through those pretty quickly and try and leave time for conversation because I think that's the most important part of these meetings. And of course, the slides will be available and all the information I'm presenting is online. So if that gets short shrift in favor of the more conversational stuff, I think that's okay. I just want to thank Dave Bell and Megan Huffman for bringing me here and the commissioners for putting this on. Really, you guys are doing something that's out on the forefront. There's lots of people talking about at the municipal and county level, state level, about developing food systems, alternative food systems, but really almost nobody has the mix of what you all are working with here in terms of public trust properties and markets and talent, all those things that the speakers this morning talked about that are the assets going on here. So it's very, very exciting. And so just before I tear into the slides, I just want to just give a short sort of bottom line reaction to what I've heard this morning and from the tour that I got yesterday from Dave and Jim at the open space management team. I mean, obviously the answer I'm going to give you to the basic question here is that yes, organic's an option. It's a key part of the opportunities that you have here. And I'll be talking about the support systems for that can be brought to bear, resources that are available more than ever before, really. But, it's obviously a time of great change. Change is really difficult often, and circumstances overtake our intentions for change, and then we have to recalibrate. But I think the important message I want to communicate, both in terms of the organic aspect and the local and regional food systems aspect, is that, first of all, that it is a system. And as we know, the basic principle of organic agriculture is that everything's connected to everything else. So you can't just change one thing. You can't just convert one little part of your farm and have an organic system. You can't just substitute organic fertilizers or just substitute biopesticides for conventional pest management. Goes, not only is the agronomic equation extremely complicated, but you've got to deal with different markets and risk management and finance and the social and cultural equation within your community. So all those things are part of it, and I just want to keep reminding as we go through all this stuff that all those pieces have to be part of it, have to be part of the strategy. And the flip side of that is that when you do that, you really are talking about systemic change. And the upside is is unlimited. You know, there's a long list of positives that can be gained by doing that, but it is complicated. So with that, I will dive in here, and again, if I go too fast, feel free to raise your hand and make me stop for a second if there's something that's not clear, but I'll try and get through it all fairly fast, and then we'll have time for more conversation. So, starting with just why organic, these are some of the reasons, most of the typical reasons that are associated with organic agriculture. Again, it's not just any one of those, but it's how they all fit together. It's the systemic nature of what real organic agriculture represents, is trying to embrace all of these opportunities, from what's going on just on the ground and in the soil to the economic aspects and what it means within the community. Brief history of organic, just for perspective. Before 1990, there were no national standards. Things were very different in different places across the country, but markets were developing. Consumers, had a lot of confusion about it. In 1990, the Organic Foods Production Act was passed, establishing the federal standards and attempting to create a national level playing field. The regulations implementing that law didn't go into effect until 2002, after a very long and drawn-out process of rulemaking. 12 years now since that regulation went into effect. It's still a work in progress. There's a lot of activity going on to continue to refine and complete the standards. Some aspects are still incomplete, and deal with how it actually gets enforced and implemented on the ground, and deal with the interaction between the standards and enforcement and the marketplace. So it's kind of a short history in the scheme of things, but a lot has happened in those last 20 years. Just a quick word about AMS, which is the Agricultural Marketing Service within which the National Organic Program is housed. AMS deals with a huge variety of all different kinds of grading and standards things. So that's why the National Organic Program ended up there. The National Organic Program, part of AMS, there's now 34 staff, but there are a number of job openings, I will say, and advertise the fact that we're looking for more people. A lot of excellent opportunities there. But it's still very small compared to the scheme of what it's trying to deal with. Yeah, basically one person per $1 billion of sales in organic retail in this country. And it's been fairly rocky over the last few years in the federal government. Declining budgets, sequestration, shutdown. So it's finally, the National Organic Program has its first budget increase for the, in the last 3-4 years, really, and they're trying to play catch up on the many things that have to be addressed as the industry continues to grow. still at a faster rate than other aspects of the food sector. In the last 11, 12 years, this is what it's come to. There are 84 accredited certifying agents. I'm not going to go into super detail about this, but USDA National Organic Program oversees the certifiers who are all over the world. There's about 50 in the U.S. now. 25,000 certified operations globally. There's a little over 18,000 in the U.S. 35 billion in U.S. retail organic sales. And yeah, it's a huge machine now that's trying to cope with all the aspects that have to be dealt with in terms of inspections, complaints, enforcements, and oversight of the certifiers. Why is certification important? This is a key aspect of this meeting, and certainly the discussions that go on out in the ground. Why do I have to be certified? Why can't I just have this relationship with my customers and let them know what I do? Well, these are some of the reasons why it's important, and I will stress that from the law's point of view, if it's not certified and you're not under $5,000 in sales, you're not organic. You can't be making that claim. You can't lead consumers to believe that what you're offering them is equivalent to an organic product. And that is the reality of what we're dealing with. It's not always enforced to the letter of the law, but that is the nature of the organic standard, and there's good reasons why it is that way. And the farmers who go through certification are going through the trouble and the cost to meet that expectation of the consumer and verify it for them. And here's just a couple of additional things I wanted to point out that are sort of beyond the usual reasons why we cite the importance of certification. And I'll be talking about the access to other USDA programs and services. This is kind of the frontier that I work on. My job at USDA is to, beyond the NOP, beyond the standards and the certification, deal with all the other parts of USDA and make organic part of their portfolio and part of their expectation of response to the constituencies that USDA has. And so integrating organic into all these other parts of USDA means that keys around certification and certified status. And it will increasingly also mean recognition by other regulatory regimes. For example, food safety, which people may want to talk a little bit about in our Q&A. I'm not going to go into it much, but it's also a huge looming factor in the regulatory regime for agriculture and especially for produce. Also recognition for other non-regulatory regimes like reward for protecting pollinators, climate change, those kind of ecosystem services markets. Organic certification and certified status will have a role in interacting with those parts of what's going to be happening in the next 10 to 15 years. And finally, just that there are strength in numbers. It's important for people who are organic to be part of the system in order to be counted. Being counted counts is what I like to say. And you can see in all the data that was presented this morning, if people are sort of opting out of being able to be part of that data, we're not getting an accurate picture of what's going on and the amount of change that's going on. So this is all to say organic certification is important. I'll be talking about what we're doing to make it more accessible and more affordable and work better for all parts of the system, but this is just the bottom line on why it's important. Quickly, just very blunt visual graphic of the growth in organic sales over, 22 years. Again, kind of a short span in the scheme of things. This is a really meteoric amount of growth, and there's a lot of growing pains that have gone along with that, and that we live with. But it speaks for itself in terms of the compelling nature and, as Don pointed out, the consumer demand that's driving this. Quick look at how the organic market breaks out in terms of where the production segments are. Very similar to what Don pointed out this morning. What I don't have a good graphic for is the actual production segments. That's actually even more exaggerated right now in terms of the dominance of fruit and vegetables and dairy, and the very small amount of commodity grains that actually make up the U.S. production organic sector. And that's just a really huge, important obstacle and opportunity in the supply chain. Again, similar to what Don had up here a little earlier with less detail, but just the distribution of organic operations in the state as of a couple of years ago. So these are all issues that we're trying to deal with. Under the heading of organic integrity. So let me go into this just a little bit. I'm going to zoom back out to what we're doing overall in USDA, come back and focus on some of the local and regional food systems programs that we're doing, and then try and tie all that back up into what you all are trying to do here. But I want to focus on this a minute because this is for the producers and people who are in the market, have questions about organic certification and what we're doing to make that work better. This is just how we look at all the aspects of our job relative to making sure the organic seal means what it is supposed to mean. I'm not going to read through all of them, but these are all just the kind of key points in the organic certification and oversight system. And it does include periodic residue testing and unannounced inspections, because ultimately the value of that seal is in its rigor. There are ways to do that as flexibly and lightly as possible, but there's just a bottom line in terms of what the certification seal is going to mean. A big part of what NOP is spending time on also as well, because we have such an active stakeholder community and so many issues about the complexity of the standards and what they mean, there are a lot of resources devoted to communications about what's going on. And the USDA Organic Insider is a really crucial resource. If you're involved in organic at all, you should be subscribing to the USDA Organic Insider, and that's just right off the front page of the NOP website, usda.gov/NOP. Organic Insider is put out whenever there's news. This doesn't have a fixed publication schedule, but it's email messaging about everything that's happening within the National Organic Program and elsewhere within USDA around organic. Just a few points about transparency of the system. This is, both a blessing and a curse from, your government bureaucratic point of view. But this is absolutely essential to the identity of organic, is that we are very wide open. We have a huge range of stakeholder viewpoints, and they all tend to be very vocal, and it's a lot to manage. It takes a huge amount of resources within the organic program, but again, that's part of what makes it valuable. It also contributes to that sort of strange blob that Don had about what people think organic means, because there are so many different attributes that people project onto it. But that's just the nature of the beast, and we're trying to accommodate all of it. The National Organic Standards Board's a key part of all this. Next meeting is coming up at the end of April in San Antonio. The agenda for all that's open to public comment with every meeting is available on the website, and so that's something I encourage everybody who is interested in this to be involved in. Just a few more details on certification oversight. Again, this is evolving over time as we see, where the weak spots are and what the demand is from the marketplace and the industry for that continuous improvement of the system. And just a couple things about enforcement here. This is kind of the activity for part of 2013. We're getting ahead of the complaint backlog, closing more complaints than are being opened. This is the distribution of complaints. Uncertified operations is by far the biggest number of complaints that we get. These are questions about, well, that guy at the farmer's market says he's organic, but I know he's not certified. So what can we do about it? And those are very typical complaints that we get at NOP. Labeling violations is somewhat smaller. That's been shrinking over the years as we educate the industry about the labeling. And then investigations related to use of prohibited materials. Somebody saw that guy spraying something and it didn't look like part of an organic system, or we have reason to believe that this product just wasn't organic, wasn't produced organically, and what's on it. We're going to keep working on improving that system. Now that we've got a little bit more money to work with in the budget, that's going to continue to be a very focused part of the upgrade of the system as we go along. And it does result in penalties. We are an enforcement entity ultimately. These numbers in terms of civil penalties, I think over time are making a difference, letting people know that, there are real consequences for stepping outside the boundaries of the law. And when we need to, we take it to criminal prosecution, and that has, had some significant effects in taking out some of the real, rogue operators in the system. All right. I'll come back again to the certification stuff and what we're doing with it in a couple of minutes, but let me zoom back out now to what we're doing at USDA overall. This is the main point of my job as the organic policy advisor is implementing our strategic plan goal, which was established in 2010 to increase the number of certified organic businesses in the country by 20%. That was Secretary Vilsack's benchmark that he established 4 or 5 years ago. We're almost on track to actually meet that. That'll be, evaluated in 2015. It was a 5-year goal. The policy advisor to the Office of the Secretary is a big part of the commitment to organic that the Secretary's made. That's my job. The USDA Organic Working Group is representatives from all the departments across the USDA, all the agencies, and we coordinate information and collaboration, streamlining overlaps between different regulatory parts of the department. The USDA Organic Literacy Initiative is very important. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second, as well as the Secretary's overall guidance to the department. But this is just to give you the sense that the Secretary and the department is very firmly committed to organic. It's an important part of the USDA that we have at this time. The Organic Literacy Initiative, when I came in and started chairing the Organic Working Group, we wondered, well, what what do USDA employees actually understand about the organic seal, and are they prepared for farmers to come into their FSA office or their NRCS office and tell them how those programs work if they're an organic farmer. And we found that very many USDA employees did not know, in some cases even, that USDA had an organic seal, or that USDA was responsible for the organic standards. So we started a program to train USDA employees online as part of what we call the Ag Learn system that all USDA employees have to participate in, and created 2 courses, a 101 and a more advanced 201. And as of a couple months ago, over 30,000 USDA employees have taken that 101 course over the, about a year and a half time. That's a third of the entire USDA workforce, just shy of a third. And so that's a huge accomplishment that will reverberate through the years, embedding organic into all of these other programs at USDA. Part of what we've done also is provide a resource guide for all the different ways that organic is serviced by all the different parts of the department, and that's all towards this question of helping determine, is organic an option for me, helping producers and handlers, processors, to figure out how the equation can work for them in terms of what's available in terms of services and programs that are available to them if they are in the organic market. One of the big leaps that we just made is to put all this on its own web page at USDA. This is the organic topic page. It's a screenshot. There's never been a single place online within the USDA websites where you could get all the information about organic. This is just usda.gov/organic. Or if you go to the main web page at usda.gov, just under the topics listing, there's now a topic category for organic agriculture, and that takes you to this page, which then links out to all the different parts of the department. So that's a big step in terms of making all this information available. It's never all been in one place before. And then about a year ago, the Secretary issued a guidance memo to all the agencies in the department and made it clear that organic is part of USDA's service in all of the programs and services that we offer, and outlined specific things that he expected every agency to do with respect to organic, to help streamline their requirements with those of the NOP, to make sure they are keeping track of organic within their agency, within their programs, figuring out how well it's being served, and to identify research and data needs related to organic. So these are all things that we're working on now, implementing this guidance. And I'm just going to run through a few of the things to highlight things that I think are especially germane to the questions that you all have here. A very important thing is organic certification cost share. This is a Farm Bill funded program. It went away for a couple of years while Farm Bill was in hiatus until recently. But now it's back with more money than it's ever had. So this reimburses producers and handlers for the cost of their annual certification, up to 75% of that cost, up to $750. Because of those caps, it skews towards the smaller operators in terms of how much benefit they're getting out of it. But those are the people who really need it. Those are the people for whom the cost of certification may be an obstacle. So this is administered by the state. Amy will be talking about this a little bit more in her presentation, I'm sure. But outreach to producers about this is really important. And nobody should be leaving that money on the table. And it's in all 50 states now that there's a specialized program that, sort of a special interest thing in Congress that provides a little extra money to 16 states where farmers have been underserved by certain USDA programs, but the bottom line here is that organic certification cost share is back and it's available everywhere in the country. Conservation programs, again, are an area where we're making great strides in terms of integrating organic with other parts of USDA. This is just a screenshot of the EQIP, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, Organic Initiative, again specified by Congress in the Farm Bill, set aside within the EQIP program specifically to serve the conservation goals of organic production operations. And we don't have anybody from NRCS here today, I don't think, but you know, this is available and to both transitioning and existing organic producers. Livestock and crop insurance for organic is one of the Secretary's top priorities. This is, again, where all of USDA or all of agriculture is sort of being driven towards crop insurance as the key safety net and shedding some of the other kinds of supports that have been available. And organic crop insurance historically hasn't worked very well for organic producers, but in the last few years that has changed significantly in terms of both the premiums that organic farmers have to pay and the prices that organic farmers can receive if they have a loss. So again, still a work in progress, but every year important steps are being made to make this work better, and this is a very important priority to the Secretary himself. And especially if you're a contract producer, that streamlines everything for organic crop insurance. And I don't think we have anybody from the Risk Management Agency here today either, but all this information is readily available on the web. And so reducing the risk for organic and transitioning producers is what this is all about. And I want to spend a little bit of time here on research and extension, because from what I can see, that's really a crucial limiting factor in the goal that you have here, helping producers make this transition in terms of both the agronomic and the economic equations that have to be solved. Information and research and transmitting that research to producers is really crucial, and if it's going to succeed. And you know, you don't want to get into this and not have it succeed. You need every bit of power that you can bring to bear on making these transitions successful. And so that's where the research comes in. And there's big resources, at least relatively speaking, now available. In the 2008 Farm Bill, there was $70 million strictly dedicated to organic research and extension. In the new Farm Bill, it's up to $100 million over 5 years. And the state of Colorado and its institutions are not among the top contenders historically for this money. So I urge you to work with Adrian and Don and everybody else, and in those institutions put together some proposals to get those resources here to the state of Colorado and to the Front Range. Okay, I especially want to point out E-Organic, and this is directly to the producers in the audience. eorganic.info. This is the electronic extension service for organic agriculture, and it's got over 100 excellent webinars available on YouTube. These are organic extension people from all over the country putting together research-based information designed specifically to inform producers about different aspects of organic management. There's not a lot on there that is specifically generated in the state of Colorado. So again, something that the extension team here needs to focus on, but nonetheless, for every different kind of production, there's great resources available there. So do not discount the amount of information that you can get from that. And the Ask an Expert function there is very well serviced, even if it's from somebody who isn't necessarily located in your bioregion. There's still a lot of great information that can be gleaned directly by reaching out through that Ask an Expert function and getting your questions answered as a producer. How do I deal with this weed problem? How do I deal with this pest? And just one other resource I want to point out, this is on one of the fact sheets that's available from the NOP. On the NOP webpage, there's a list of fact sheets that are available. This is a very extensive guide for organic producers, really directed at the transitional producer more than anybody. And this was put together by the National Center for Appropriate Technology a couple of years ago. It should be updated again in another year or so, but it's still very current information. Market news, prices and movement of organic products is available. This is another area where USDA has been investing a fair amount of money. The AMS price portal, again, you can get out to all this from that main organic topic page. It'll take you right to all different kinds of data, different segments of the industry in terms of what's happening with prices. And it covers the whole gamut. Okay, so now I want to spend a little bit of time on what we're doing relative to the certification system, because, you know, as I said, it's a work in progress. We know there are some issues. We're 10 years into implementation. Got a very complex regulatory scheme. Takes a lot of intensive work. There's a lot of minutia. That's the nature of the organic standard and what people expect from it. And there isn't anything else like it in government or agriculture. There's nothing that covers every different kind of production, every different region of the country, every different aspect of production. So it takes a lot of invention and innovation to make this work. So this is our goal, is make organic certification more affordable, accessible, and attainable. And a lot of this is directed at the direct market and smaller scale producers, but also your ag of the middle producers who are, you know, often, you know, on a very thin margin, and the organic equation may or may not work out for them, and they often look at certification as well. Is that something I really need? Is it worth the effort? And so, you know, these are some of the issues that we're trying to address, and, you know, this is just an honest look at where we are in terms of progress of creating this, you know, unique and complex system. There is inconsistency between certifiers across the country. There's a lot of emphasis on record keeping, sometimes to an excess. There's a lot of time involved in doing this for producers, and so we're trying to find ways to find the best way of doing this. So these are the principles that we're trying to apply: more efficient, more streamlined, practical, you know, focusing on practices over paperwork, making sure that enforcement really is fair and focused, that we're applying those limited resources to the best effect. But still, you know, as I said before, integrity is still the most important thing. That can't be sacrificed, no matter what. So, you know, we're trying to hit the sweet spot on all this. Retraining certifiers to make sure they're not going overboard on the paperwork or worried that they're going to be penalized by NOP if they're not focused, you know, strictly on the paperwork minutia. dialing in, what's the right amount of information that's needed to meet the requirements of the law and the expectations of consumer, but not go further than that. So sound and sensible are our catchwords for trying to do this. Hitting the sweet spot, dialing it in. Let me stop right there. Are there any questions on all that before I go on? Because I want to talk about the local and regional food system aspects, because that's also something that's very crucial to what you're talking about here and integrates with the organic objective. Right up here in front, in the red shirt. Yeah, the question is certification an annual process or is it a one-time deal? No, and Amy will be going over more of these details in terms of, the Colorado state certification system itself, so I've kind of glossed over that. But yes, certification is an annual process. It requires an inspection every year. That's written into the law. And you have to update what's called your organic system plan. That's the keystone of the whole certification system for the producer or the processor, is to have that plan for how you're going to meet the standards. What's the nature of your system? How is it addressing the different agronomic challenges? So it does require that cycle to be done every year, and that's why the cost share is available on an annual basis as well. It offsets those inspection and application costs. Quick question in the back there, Don. Well, both. There are certifiers who are at the front edge of that and, have really pushed NOP. Sorry, the question was, in terms of the sound and sensible streamlining and simplification, is that happening just in a few certifiers, is that happening across the board? NOP is training all the certifiers on these principles and implementing them. And yes, some of the certifiers are further out ahead in front of it than others. I had a question over there. No, go ahead, in the white sweater there. So the question is about the difference in what's required to make the transition to certified organic status for somebody who's been more or less practicing organic methods over some period of time versus somebody who's actually converting from conventional production. That would kind of be handled on in terms of somebody who's been, or at least thinks they've been practicing under an organic system. If they have records that can document that, then they can shorten the time that it would take to come to certified organic status. And again, well, I didn't mention it before, but if you're not familiar, the law does require 3 years after any application of prohibited materials before the harvest of a crop that can be labeled as certified organic. So it's that 3-year transition period that is kind of the crucial question. If you've been practicing organic or you're taking over land that hasn't had any activity on it, records can substitute for some of that 3-year period. If you're transitioning from a conventional system, then you have to make that deliberate choice to start the clock ticking, and there are various aspects to that, both agronomically and market-wise, depending on what kind of operation that you have. And this is the crucial question, and this is where you really need to bring to bear the research and extension resources and have that be a full partnership with the producers that you're trying to bring through this transition. Growers who just try and wing it on their own tend to not be as successful. They need a support system. All right, one more question, then I'll move on. Yes. Yeah. So that's the comment is about how do you convince people that the seal really matters, or that you can even really know that it is organic. There's a lot behind the seal, and this is both a problem with its, the challenge is both the complexity of what's there and communicating it, as we were talking about this morning. All right, so we'll come back to more of these questions, and I just want to talk a little bit about local and regional food systems and what USDA is doing around that. And this is newer to USDA than organic. Organic's been part of USDA for 20 years now, since the law was passed, 25 almost. But big part of this administration has been to focus more attention on local and regional food systems under this banner of what we call Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food. And this is another great resource that's got a central internet identity and links out to all different parts of the department relative to this. There are two key components to the resources there for Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food. There's both narrative links, and then there's a very unique geospatial mapping resource that is backed by a database of all the projects that USDA has funded under 27 different programs related to local and regional food systems. So here's just a screenshot of what happens when you search that database for organic projects, for the word organic showing up in the description of one of these projects. So this is on the order of maybe 5,000 projects total that have been funded by USDA since 2009 related to local and regional food systems. Organic's a big part of it. So that intersection of organic and local and regional is, from my point of view, it's much more something that's in synchrony and harmony than it is something that's in conflict in terms of what's actually going on the ground. These things tend to be associated with each other rather than conflicting with each other, despite sort of the media or social media focus on, well, would you rather have organic or would you rather have local? That tends to be less of an issue when you're looking at what's actually happening on the ground. And the way this system works is that you can search, you put in different search parameters on the map for what you're trying to look for, whether it's local meat production or farm to school or infrastructure projects. There's many different ways to search the map, and then from the results you just click on one of those dots that shows up and you get a screen pop up that tells you about that project, and then you can see what program funded it. You can see what the type of entity is that got that funding, whether it's a nonprofit or private company or a farmer or a municipality. And there are many projects led by municipal and county governments that are in this database. So you can see what other people around the country are doing that may give you an idea for a successful application for a grant or cost sharing or other ways that these services work. And finally, I'm not going to go into detail here, but we can do that in the Q&A. We do have a new farm bill, finally, and there are numerous provisions significant new funding for both organic and local and regional food systems. And by God, don't leave that money on the table either. Take advantage of this, find out, what the programs are that are going to be relevant to the goals that you have, and there are going to be several, and figure out how to go after that money, because this is there to be used. And this is just the cute graphic that the communications folks at USDA thought they'd use to illustrate the president's comment when he signed the bill. He tossed off this comment about, well, it's like a Swiss Army knife. It's got all these different tools in it, and I thought we should start wearing little Swiss Army badges on our suits, but it is really sort of an apt metaphor, because there are many, many different kinds of things in that bill, and again, there are very significant resources for local and regional food systems and organic, focused on infrastructure, focused on training, focused on capital investment in forms of loans. We've got folks, Lee is here from FSA, and April's here from Rural Development, these Colorado offices. These are the interfaces for many of these programs, and they've got information out on the table out there, and they are prepared to talk and listen to the ideas that you have and put them into practice. So I'll stop there. I think we got time for 10 minutes or so of Q&A, and thank you all very, very much. I really appreciate you listening. So I may have been, just totally off on the wrong tangent for what you guys actually needed. So feel free to go off in any direction that you want. All right.
Okay, ready? So the question is, explain the relationship of under $5,000 in sales to organic certification.
The law that was passed in 1990 that established the U.S. organic standards exempted operations that have less than $5,000 in annual sales of organic product from the requirement for being certified. So you can actually use the term organic and not be certified if your organic sales are under $5,000 a year. Now that was in 1990. It hasn't changed since then, so that's a really small operation, and people think they can sort of skate around that and say, well, yeah, I'm one of those exempted operations, and if they're doing $1,000 a day at the farmer's market every weekend, they're probably not under $5,000 in sales.
Okay, we got a whole plethora of questions here.
Okay, good.
Ask growers, input suppliers, or handlers/processors, somebody wrote a novel on this thing, thank you, innovate in the new methods or technologies such as biofertilizers, pest control, feed supplements, ingredients, and what must they do to assure that they are considered organic, compliant with organic standards? How costly or even how feasible is it to get new ways of doing organic production approved? Must they prove safety of efficacy?
So materials that can be used in organic production and handling have to be approved by the National Standards Board and then by the Secretary, and this is all on what's known as the National List of Approved and Prohibited Substances. And as technology moves forward, there is a process for petitioning to be for materials to be put on that list. It's not terribly costly. It's not terribly fast either, but a significant amount of resources are devoted to that. Really, the organic community is focused on that to some excess, in different perspectives. But it can be done. But the law does have specific criteria around both human and environmental safety and consistency with organic principles in order for materials to be approved to be allowed on the national list. Efficacy is not necessarily one of those criteria in the statute, but it is something that the National Organic Standards Board pays attention to when they're evaluating materials for inclusion.
Does the National Organic Program want to require certification of retail stores who sell meat, fish, produce, and other prepared foods labeled organic?
The law does not require retailers to be certified, but there is, but that is available. The NOP has protocol for certifiers to be inspected and verified in terms of their handling practices, making sure that they are, maintaining organic integrity through their whole supply chain, but it is not required by the law. So it's a market advantage or not for those people who do it.
Why did the NOP, the National Organic Program, remove the sunset provisions on the list of prohibited materials? What is the effect of having an evergreen list?
So that question is about the requirement in the law that if something goes on the national list of approved substances, it has to be reviewed every 5 years. This is known as the sunset provision. We recently clarified that when something comes up for sunset, it's reviewed by the board, but in order to make a change to its status, a 2/3 vote of the board is required to propose to the Secretary that its status be changed. Previously, the practice of the board had been to require 2/3 vote of the board to keep it on the list. And some things in the past had been removed from the list in that process, but the legal analysis of the program actually clarified that in order to change something from its status on the list, because it's already gone through that process of evaluation by the board against all these criteria that are in the law, so in order to change that when it's reviewed every 5 years, it requires an affirmative 2/3 vote of the board to change its status. So the term evergreen in relation to sunset, is really a misnomer.
Okay, three-part question here. Organic certification looks intrusive compared to conventional farm practices. First question, are there any equivalency inspections in conventional ag?
No. I mean, there's nothing equivalent to organic inspection and verification that's legally required. There are numerous kinds of third-party verification programs, but none of them are enshrined in law in the way that organic is. I mean, the organic label is still voluntary. It's not required to be organic, but the way that the program works is, founded on that 1990 law and then the very extensive regulation that implements it. I hope that answered the question.
Great. What if I screw the same question, person? What if I screw up on one season, or what if a neighbor farm screws me up? What is my penalty or protections?
There are both penalties and protections built into the system. It really depends. That's really on a case-by-case basis, but the nature of the system is not that mistakes that you make inadvertently or things that were out of your control will always result in losing your certification. That's not the case. But there are times when it does, and I can't really generalize about that. But there are checks and balances, and there is an appeals process in the system that will go to great lengths to assure that both the integrity of the program is being upheld from the consumer's point of view, and that it's fair to the producer or processor who's being certified.
And the last of this three-part.
Because in Colorado, you have a pesticide investigation division.
Yes.
And if there is trespass, there are other animals that may not be in the program.
Yeah, there are other entities in government who are responsible for those kinds of damages or investigating those kinds of problems.
So for the benefit of our video viewers, Amy Stafford from Colorado Department of Agriculture clarified that CDA provides pesticide drift investigations in these instances. So, what additional challenges do organic farmers face with the new Food Safety Modernization Act requirements?
Well, we don't know the answer to that question yet, but organic farmers and all producers, especially if you're in fruits and vegetables, specialty crops, quote unquote, as we know them, are going to be very challenged by the implementation of the Food Safety Modernization Act. This was passed in 2010. Gives responsibility to FDA, to the Food and Drug Administration, to regulate agriculture with regard to food safety practices and microbial foodborne pathogens. So FDA issued proposed rules last year, which generated a very large number of comments from all segments of the industry and the public. In November, they announced that they were going to go back to the drawing board on certain aspects of those proposed rules, including handling of biological soil amendments, manure and compost, water testing, packing and holding, the movement of product from one farm to another. They have stated that they are going to repropose the rules because they got such a backlash on them, and frankly said, well, we recognize that FDA doesn't have a lot of experience in regulating agriculture, and we still have more to learn. So to their credit, they are going to reopen those aspects of the proposal. The reproposal is supposed to happen this summer. They are under a court order to issue final rules on implementing the food safety regulations by summer of 2016. So yes, there will be significant impacts to everybody in the produce business and some other aspects of production by these rules, but we really don't know exactly what that's going to be yet. And organic, will have certain aspects that are unique to it, others where it won't matter one way or the other.
So we know that there are some producers in the marketplace that implement organic practices, choose not to be certified organic. We see this. Why do you think this is something we see in the marketplace, and what are the barriers?
Well, the non-certified, but operating as if they were producers, there's a lot of reasons for that. We don't really have time to go into all of them, but the short answer is a combination of they don't want to be bothered, they resent the government being in charge of it, and they think they have a better system. Those are just some of the things that you hear for reasons why they're not interested in being certified. And bottom line is that they don't recognize the value, or they discount the consequences of representing themselves to the consumer as if they were organic but not certified. And I tried to point out some of the obstacles. It does take time. It does cost money. That can be offset to a large degree, but it is a cost, and it's complicated. So, it isn't for everybody, and it's not supposed to be.
Does the USDA have a publicly accessible database of certified organic producers?
Yes, the NOP does have a database. It's currently only updated once a year, but the Farm Bill just provided an infusion of one-time funding for USDA to upgrade that database and its whole IT system, so that will eventually, in the fairly near future, next year or two, result in a real-time, a much more real-time database about certification status of everybody who is in the system.
Back to the exempt producer question, how can a retailer who is certified label products from an exempted grower?
An exempted grower under 5,000 in sales, if some of their product is going to a retailer, it could theoretically still be labeled as organic by that retailer, but they would have to, undertake some kind of extra affidavit or something, from that producer to be able to accept that fact that they are exempted. But somebody who's under $5,000 in sales is not really going to be doing any wholesale sales to a retailer.
Not much, anyway, right?
Not much.
So finally, our question, with some of this pushback around being certified, we're seeing certified naturally grown and other labeling types of programs in the marketplace. So what are the NOP's feelings about these beyond organic, certified naturally grown advertisements and claims?
A claim will cross the line in NOP's view if it is really indirectly implying to the consumer that the product is organic. And many of these alternatives are problematic on that level. And USDA NOP has tried to engage that with a fairly light hand, I will say. They have not brought the full force of their authority necessarily, because our goal is to get people into the system. It's not to, wage war on farmers who aren't part of it. But if there's a really blatant impression given to the consumer that a product is equivalent under the organic standards to something that's certified, but it's not certified and it's not exempt, that is against the law, and eventually it will result in an enforcement action. So, the bottom line is the basic approach right now is more heavily on education and outreach than it is on, cracking down, but, that will have to change over time.
Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, thank you.